911 emergency.
This is Merlin Jerzak calling from 29458 Kiwi Court in St. Joe.
On October 22, 1989, 11-year-old Jacob Wetterling, his brother Trevor, and their closest friend Aaron Larson were riding their bicycles from a convenience store to their house in St. Joseph, Minnesota. Suddenly, a masked man holding a gun appeared out of the bushes and ordered the boys to lay face down on the ground. After asking each youngster his age, he selected Jacob and ordered the other boys to flee without looking back. This was the final time anyone had ever seen Jacob alive. How did Jacob Wetterling ultimately pass away? How long would it take to understand the situation? Today, we have a story from a little town called St. Joseph, Minnesota. It's a small place, about 75 miles north of Minneapolis, and most folks who live there own their houses. There's a college called St. Benedict in the town, so many young people work and live there. But back in October 1989, something really bad happened in this seemingly perfect small town. Before we talk about that, let's go back to the very beginning. Jacob Wetterling was born on February 17, 1978, in Long Prairie, Minnesota, to Jerry and Patty Wetterling. The Wetterlings were a loving family of 6, with Jacob being the oldest of 4 children. He had a younger brother, Trevor, and 2 younger sisters, Amy and Carmen. Growing up in St. Joseph, Jacob enjoyed a happy and carefree childhood. He was an athletic and outgoing boy who loved sports, music, and animals. Jacob played on various sports teams, including basketball and baseball, showcasing his sense of humor and kind-hearted nature along the way. October 22, 1989, was a quiet day in St. Joseph, Minnesota. The whole Wetterling family had the day off, so they all stayed home. Jerry and Patty got ready to go to a dinner party in Clearwater, which was about 20 miles away. Jacob, being the oldest sibling, took charge of Trevor, Carmen, and Amy while their parents were at a party. Patty and her husband hadn't had some alone time for a while, so they wanted the kids to stay home. Around 9 o'clock, after their parents left, Jacob called Patty at the party and asked if he could take Trevor and Trevor's bikes to the nearby Tom Thumb to rent a movie. Patty simply said no. It was already dark outside, and if they went out, their younger sisters would be left alone at home without anyone to watch over them. Even though they were upset, the boys did not just give up. Then they asked if they could call their dad Jerry and go to the store. They told him that they would be careful, wear bright jackets, and use their flashlights on the mile-long walk to the video store. Also, they told him that they had talked to their neighbors and found out that their 14-year-old daughter would watch the girls while the 2 boys rode their bikes to the shop. Jerry saw how much the boys wanted to go, so he gave permission to them. As soon as he could, Jacob called his friend Aaron Larson and Trevor and went to their house to see them. They all rode their bikes to get to the video store. They did not have much trouble finding the video store, but it took them a while to find the movie they were looking for once they were there. In the end, they picked the VHS version of The Naked Gun. They got it on rent and rode their bikes back home. Because it was dark and they needed their flashlights to see, the boys moved slowly. After a short ride, a man in a mask came out of a garage and stopped their path. This made them scared. He scared them when he put a gun to their heads and told them to get off their bikes. He told them to put their bikes in a ditch next to the road. And then he made them all lie on their stomachs on the ground. Then he asked them all how old they were. When he saw that Trevor was the youngest, he told him to slowly get up and head toward a nearby forest. He warned him that he would shoot him if he made a sound or turned around to look behind him. Because Trevor was scared, he did what the man told him to do. The man in the mask turned around and looked at the other 2 boys. So he could see them, he told them both to turn around and look at him instead of the road. He seemed to be looking at Jacob after a short break to think. Then he told Aaron to get up and leave slowly, just like he had told Trevor a few minutes earlier. Aaron did what he promised to do. He slowly stood up and looked at his best friend Jacob one more time. Then he ran quickly to where Trevor had gone when he turned around. After this, only Jacob's kidnapper saw him alive again. Even though what had happened scared and shocked them both, Trevor and Aaron could see that Jacob was in a lot worse shape than they were. Jacob and Trevor ran back to their house, but there were no adults there when they got there. The girls told the neighbor's daughter what happened because she was looking out for them. The scared looks on the guys' faces told the girl that they were not playing and that something bad had happened. After she called him, her dad Merlin Scherzak went to the Wetterlings' house. He called right away, while Patty and Jerry were still at the dinner party. The police were also called and quickly got there. Patty and Jerry did not take long to get back to their house after dinner. Even though they were happy Trevor was safe and back home, they were very upset about what had happened to Jacob. Very quickly, it became important to find Jacob. The Stearns County Sheriff's Office sent a lot of officers to the end of the road where Jacob was taken. But when the police started their investigation that night, they made a big mistake that was hard to fix. On that night, not all of them went to the homes near where the girl was taken. In cases like Jacob's kidnapping, the police find it crucial to speak with neighbors in the vicinity where the kidnapping occurred within the first 24 hours of the search. This is because during this period, people's memories are still vivid, and they are more likely to have noticed anything unusual or heard something relevant. Those living nearby are more likely to provide valuable information compared to people who live farther away. However, in Jacob's situation, the police might have been overly confident that they would find him swiftly, leading them to neglect this important step they should have taken. Not everyone in the area where Jacob was taken was talked to by the sheriff's deputies. Instead, they spent most of their time walking and flying around looking for him. The police only spoke with one person, Dan Rossier, who lived near the area where Jacob was taken. Dan informed them that on the same night Jacob disappeared, he saw a small car speed up his driveway, make a quick turn, and then go back the way it came. The police initially thought this car might be involved in taking the boy, and they found tire tracks near the crime scene as evidence. Since Rossier lived close to where the crime happened, he also became a suspect. At that time, Stearns County Sheriff Charlie Graff believed the case would likely be solved within a few hours because the police responded quickly, and the suspect wouldn't have had much time to escape. On October 23, 1989, the first night of the search, it was too dark to continue. The police went out again the next morning at 8 a.m. to look for Jacob. When the search started up again, FBI agents came to help with both the search and the investigation. On October 24, an FBI expert joined the investigation. Based on what he knew about the theft and the person who took Jacob, he thought that the thief was probably a white loner with a physical defect who had done something similar before. On the 25th, more than 500 people went to St. Joseph Church to pray for Joseph's safe return. On Thursday, the 26th, the case made national news, and business people from Minneapolis and St. Paul offered a reward of $100,000 for Jacob's safe return. The governor of Minnesota said on the 27th that the National Guard and State Police will help with the search. They would look for Jacob in a 700-mile radius from St. Joseph. Jacob was one of the most thoroughly looked-for people in the country's history. People from all over the country helped the Wetterlings in many different ways. The news paid a lot of attention to the case itself. People wore white bands on their shirts as a sign. People got thousands of flyers in the mail, on pizza boxes, and in shop windows. The radio played Jacob's favorite song, and a word from his mother, Patty, all over the state of Minnesota. Before the internet, this is how word would spread about a lost child. A lot of the people who offered to help find the child worked for 18 hours straight. Even with the help of sniffer dogs, there was no odor. At the end of the first week, on October 29, more than 100 local, state, and federal police officers and agents were working on the case. It was too bad that Jacob was not there. In the past, some people have criticized the police for expanding the search too quickly and over a wide area during that time. Instead of conducting a thorough investigation that garnered national media attention, they should have focused on a smaller area near where the kidnapping took place. By talking to everyone in that immediate vicinity first, they could have gathered more specific and potentially valuable information before broadening their search. This approach might have helped them make progress in the case more effectively. On 3 different days in November 1989, police showed sketches to the public. One of every 6 guys in the Tom Thumb shop on the night the girl was taken was seen with her. Some people say that he was staring at them. He was white, weighed 200 pounds, and was in his 50s. He had white hair. 6 days after that, on November 12, they put out 2 more versions. One was that 2 weeks after the theft, a man was heard talking about it in a Tom Thumb store. One of the others was a man who tried to take a boy from the New Brighton neighborhood in Minneapolis. People say that both of these look like the man who was seen at the Tom Thumb shop the night Jacob was taken. From these sketches, they got a lot of ideas, but none of them worked. On November 30, they released what they thought was the best picture of the person who took the girl. It put together parts from the 3 sketches that came before it. Based on this combined sketch, the cops had a lot of ideas, but none of them turned out to be true. On December 13, FBI agents talked to Jared Chirrell, who was taken from the nearby town of Cold Spring in January 1989, when he was only 12 years old. Investigators talked to Jared and asked him to help them draw a picture of the person who took him because they thought it might be the same person who did both crimes. Jared helped them make a picture that got a lot of attention, led to hundreds of new clues, and got more people interested in the case. On December 16, FBI agents talked to Daniel James Heinrich, who lives about 30 miles from St. Joseph in Paynesville. He might have been an important person to find. In that area, there have been a number of murders and kidnappings of young boys over the past few years. Jared and Jacob were not there. Heinrich told the FBI that he did not know anything about the cases of Jacob and Jared. The cops did not know what to do and were confused. About a month later, on January 12, 1990, they went back to see Heinrich and talked to him. This time, he gave them his tennis shoes and some hair from his body so they could match them to any other evidence they might have. 3 days later, on January 15, Heinrich agreed to let the cops take the back tires off of his blue 1982 Ford EXT hatchback so they could match them to tire marks they found at the place where Jacob was taken. The next day, on January 15, police found out that Heinrich also had a 1989 Mercury Topaz, which he had until March of that year. So he would have taken Jared in this car if he had really done it. Jared told them that the car they made him sit in was about as similar to the one that took him as an 8 or a 9 on a scale from 1 to 10. On January 24, 2016, the police visited Heinrich's house and seized several items, including 2 police scanners, a carrying case, lists of scanner bands, a pair of boots and clothes. On January 26, an officer showed Jared a picture of Heinrich along with 5 other white men. Jared gave Heinrich a rating of 4 out of 10, unsure if any of them were involved in his abduction. Then, on February 9, 1990, the FBI obtained evidence that fibers taken from Heinrich's Mercury Topaz in January 1989 matched fibers found on Jared's clothes. Heinrich was apprehended on the same day that Jared was taken and assaulted, but he denied any involvement, so he was not charged at that time. As the investigation progressed, fewer leads were found, and fewer resources were dedicated to finding Jacob as time passed. Eventually, the case went cold, and despite it being about a missing person, it couldn't be solved, leaving the family without answers. During the search and investigation, the Wetterling family went through a terrible time. Even though people in their area and all over the country loved and helped them, the death of their child and brother broke their hearts. As time went on, they began to wonder if Jacob would ever come back to them alive. Even though she was sad, Patty Wetterling decided that other families should not have to go through the same pain as hers. On January 16, 1990, The Wetterlings said that they would help with this by starting the Jacob Wetterling Foundation. They wanted more people to know about child snatchers, how they take kids, and what each person can do to stop it. Even though the family was in a lot of pain, they did what they could to help other people. Because of Jacob's case, the rules for these kinds of cases in the United States have changed. In 1994, the government made the Jacob Wetterling Act. For the first time in U.S. history, a law was passed that said each state had to keep a list of people who had been found guilty of sexual crimes. This law has helped a lot of other parents find their own lost children over the years, making a lasting difference. The Wetterlings helped a lot of people, but they still did not know what happened to their dear friend Jacob. Even though it seemed less possible that he was still alive as time went on, they kept hoping that he was. Joy Baker, a 43-year-old mother of two, became interested in the story of Jacob Wetterling in 2010. At the time of Jacob's abduction in 1989, Joy was 22 years old. Determined to find out what happened, she drove to the place where he was taken. Feeling unsure of where to start, Joy did what she knew best. She wrote a blog. On October 23, 2010, she posted a blog entry titled "Where Are You, Jacob?" in which she asked about the missing 21-year-old boy. Little did she know that this would mark the beginning of a lifelong journey that would take her to unexpected places. Joy meticulously documented her investigation on her old school blog, allowing others to follow her journey. She immediately started asking questions and pursuing any leads she discovered. Joy carefully studied old police reports and news stories, looking for even the smallest clues. In her research, she found that mistakes were made during the initial search for Jacob. Law enforcement failed to follow up on promising leads, mishandled or lost crucial evidence, and even overlooked important witnesses. Joy's dedication led her to write an entire blog post about the weather and moon phases on the night of the kidnapping. She discovered that the moon would not have been fully visible at night, making it difficult for witnesses to see a car. This suggested that the abduction likely occurred in the middle of the night. During her investigation, Joy was advised to talk to Jared, who had been involved in the initial search and whose case was connected to Jacob's. Both Joy and Jared worked together to find information about the decades-old case. Their efforts led them to a newspaper story from 1987 detailing a series of attacks and kidnappings of young boys between 1986 and 1987. All of these crimes were carried out in a similar manner by an elusive person who was armed. Jacob had been taken to Paynesville, a small town, and all the other incidents also occurred there, within about 30 minutes of travel. Joy was able to find some of the victims with the help of Jared. When she did, she found that they were all grown men looking for answers about terrible things that had happened to them years ago. Both Jared and Joy thought about where they would attack. They called it the Paynesville cluster of attacks. They could not believe what they saw, so they took it to the police. This reopened a case that had been over for many years. All of a sudden, it was a big deal again because Joy's blog got a lot of attention, and a lot of people told the cops about it. People all over the country brought up the story once more. As the cops looked into what had happened, Joy's blog went silent. Police started looking for the person again in 2015, 26 years after the first crime. A bit of DNA from a different country was found on the sweater Jared was wearing when he was taken. This showed that the person who took Jared was not from the U.S. On July 10, 2015, they found that this DNA profile was the same as that of a man who lived in Paynesville and was 59 years old when the theft happened. Daniel James Heinrich was the person's name. Heinrich was part of the original investigation, and Joy and Jared were also keeping an eye on him, but there was never enough proof to put him in jail. Last but not least, on October 27, 2015, U.S. Special Agent Shane Ball charged Heinrich with a crime in U.S. A judge named Jeffrey J. Keyes is a federal judge. The deadline for Jared's case had passed, but Heinrich was accused of 25 other crimes. After that, he was caught, and when the case went to court, his lawyers made a deal so that he would not be charged with murder or kidnapping, but only with the other charges. In return, on August 31, 2016, Heinrich showed them where he had hidden Jacob's body. It was on a farm in Paynesville, about 30 miles from St. Joseph, and not too far from where Heinrich lived at the time. On September 6, 2016, more than 27 years after Jacob Wetterling's abduction, Heinrich appeared in court and made a shocking confession. He admitted that on October 22, 1989, he had kidnapped Jacob, harmed him, and tragically ended his life. Additionally, he confessed to abducting Jared earlier that same year. Heinrich recounted that he was driving along the road when he noticed 3 young boys riding their bikes at night with their lights on. He decided to follow them and parked in a yard, waiting for them to pass by. When the boys crossed the yard, he took Jacob away from his friends, instructing the other 2 to run away. He then took Jacob to Paynesville, a place he was familiar with. Here, he shot him and left his body in a dirt pit near a road that leads to a sewage pond in a remote area. He went home, where he waited for a while. After midnight, he went back to where he had left Jacob's body and moved it 100 yards north of where the killing happened. People were working nearby, so he was able to find a bobcat that he knew how to use. He used this to dig a hole for Jacob and put him in it. He went back to the tomb a year or 2 later and saw that it had been partly dug up and that Jacob's red jacket was still on display. He was worried at the time, so he dug up as many of his bones as he could and took them to a farm in Paynesville, where he reburied them. When the police caught him for one of his many crimes, he showed them the same place. Heinrich got 20 years in prison for what he did wrong. Heinrich went to the Federal Medical Center Divens in Massachusetts in January 2017 so that he could finish the last 20 years of his sentence there. Heinrich's confession and the discovery of Jacob's body brought an end to the investigation into one of the worst killings in U.S. history. After the investigation was over, Jacob's family got his body back. They were able to give him a good service at the St. John's Abbey Friends Cemetery in Collegeville, Stearns County, Minnesota. As Joy Baker tried to help solve the case, she became close to the Wetterling family. She said that she did not help with the investigation to get popular or get credit, but because she wanted to help a mother who was going through the same terrible thing. Joy Baker and Patty Wetterling are going to be friends for a long time. They worked together to write the book Dear Jacob, A Mother's Journey of Hope. It talks about them. Patty is known for her work to make sure children are safe and for helping to pass the Federal Wetterling Act, which changed how the law is used in the U.S. in these kinds of cases. When they knew for sure that Jacob was dead, it broke their hearts. Even though they know for sure that their loved Jacob is dead, the Jacob Wetterling Foundation and the Federal Wetterling Act, which were passed in his name, keep his memory alive. Patty Wetterling talked about how painful it was for him to know that his last days, hours and minutes were coming to an end. She said that Jacob was still living when they found him. Even though terrible people like Heinrich are probably never really gone, the Act and the Foundation will make sure that they do not get away with their crimes. And there is the terrible story of Jacob Wetterling, who was taken away and whose family tried hard to find him but couldn't. They were glad when they finally found him.
A major development in 2 cold cases in Las Vegas from the 1990s. Police now say the same man is responsible for killing 2 women.
After 30 years of confusion and pain, the families of the victims can finally rest easy. Police have now figured out that Lorian Pereira and Pearl Wilson Ingram were both killed by the same person. Las Vegas is a resort city in Nevada that is known all over the world as Sin City. It is known for its casinos, good dining, entertainment, and lively nightlife. It is in the middle of the Mojave Desert and is known as a place where people go to have fun and treat themselves. Unfortunately, places like Las Vegas also tend to attract criminals, like the 2 cold cases that have been going on for 30 years. Lorian Pereira was born in 1961, and she was a loved daughter, mother, sister, niece, cousin, and friend. We do not know much about her past, but her oldest daughter, Desiree Copping, says she had 3 girls of her own and grew up with siblings. Lorian was a hardworking mom who did her best to take care of her kids, even though their father was not in their lives. Lorian made the hard choice to give up her youngest daughter for adoption so she could give her a better life. People who knew her loved her and looked up to her. Lorian lived in East Charleston with her 2 older girls in 1992. She had no idea that a terrible thing was going to happen to her. Pearl Wilson Ingram was the 5th child in a big, loving family. She was born in 1959. We do not know much about her close family members, which is unfortunate. Pearl's sister, Teresa Board, remembers her as a happy, relaxed person who always had a sense of humor and loved life. Pearl raised her son on her own because her son's father did not want to be a part of their lives. Even though there were problems, she worked hard to take care of her kid as best she could. Pearl lived and worked in Las Vegas in 1994, which is where her life tragically ended. The morning of Friday, December 11, 1992, in Las Vegas was like any other. Early in the morning, as the city started to wake up, a guy walked his dog near East Charleston Boulevard. He had no idea that he would come across a terrible scene. As he got closer to an empty area east of the Montgomery Ward store in the 2800 block, he found a dead woman's body lying in the open. The man called the cops right away, and they were there soon after. The victim was named Lorian Pereira by detectives from the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, who looked at the scene of the crime. Tragically, her legs and wrists had been bound, leaving clear ligature marks. Her head was hurt by a blow to the side, and her mouth was taped shut. During the autopsy, a closer look at the body showed signs of a sexual attack. Lorian's death was caused by strangling her by hand, which led to asphyxiation. The case was considered a murder. On January 11, 1994, there was another shocking find in the same area. When a garbage man was cleaning out a dumpster behind the Vaughn's grocery store in the 4400 block of East Charleston Boulevard, he found a woman's body buried under piles of trash. Pearl Wilson Ingram was named as the person who died. Pearl had been sexually assaulted, strangled, and hit with something hard, just like Lorian. Several of her teeth were missing, and scratches on her face showed that she had fought her attacker. The police decided that it was likely the same person who killed both people. Even after doing a lot of research and talking to friends, family, and known sexual offenders in the area, the cops could not find a suspect or figure out why either crime happened. Since there were no good leads to follow, the investigations finally ended, leaving the victims' families with no answers. In March 2007, there was a big step forward in the case of Lorian Pereira. Homicide officers looked at the evidence from the murder in 1992 again and found sperm in a swab that was taken during the first autopsy. More DNA testing showed that the man's profile was unknown. The DNA profile was put into a database called the Combined DNA Index System, but there were no hits. In July 2012, when the murder of Pearl Ingram had been a cold case for a long time, a study of the case led to another important discovery. A skin swab that had been taken during the first probe was found by the detectives. With improvements in forensic science, they were able to use the swab to get a DNA analysis. When this profile was put into CODIS, the DNA sample from the Lorian Pereira case matched it. This important find finally connected the two killings, proving that they were both done by the same person. The LVMPD Cold Case Unit asked Othram Labs for help with a genealogy probe in June 2022. Using techniques from genetic genealogy, the Othram Labs team did a lot of study to find possible relatives of the unknown suspect. Eddie George Snowden Jr. was named as a possible candidate. The detectives then got in touch with Eddie George Snowden Jr.'s family to get DNA samples to test. Details about which family members were called were not made public, but when their DNA was compared to the profile made from the crime scenes, it was clear that Eddie George Snowden Jr. was the killer in both cases. Eddie George Snowden Jr. was born in 1937 and lived in different places, including Las Vegas. Records show that he lived in the 2800 block of East Charleston, just a block from where Lorian's body was found and 2 miles from where Pearl's body was found. There do not seem to be any clear links between Snowden and the people he hurt. People think that he went after them because he found them by themselves. Police also looked into Snowden's past and found that he had lived in several places between 1956 and 1979. These places included Sacramento, Santa Cruz, Madeira, Merced, Woodland, and Watsonville. Detectives in these places were told to look over their cold case files because Snowden may have also committed crimes there. Eddie George Snowden Jr. passed away in February of 2017 when he was 80 years old. The relief that his identification brought to the families of Lorian Pereira and Pearl Wilson Ingram is indisputable. The relatives of the victims will never get over the suffering and loss they went through, but discovering who was responsible for the tragedy provides them with a feeling of justice and puts an end to the sorrow that will follow them for the rest of their lives. The eldest daughter of Lorian, Desiree Copping, thanked the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department in a letter for their diligent work on the investigation and for eventually solving it. She informed them that she had located her younger sister, Lorian, who had been adopted just before the murder mystery was solved. She said that Lorian had given her up for adoption. Teresa Board, Pearl's sister, wishes to express her gratitude to the investigators and to the family of Snowden, whose DNA samples assisted in the identification of the perpetrator. The fact that these cold cases were solved after 30 years shows how hard people work and how investigative technology keeps getting better. Even though Lorian Pereira and Pearl Wilson Ingram's families may never get over their losses, finding out that Eddie George Snowden Jr. did it gives them some answers and a sense of peace. These cases also show how important DNA records in genetic genealogy are for solving crimes and giving victims and their families justice.
Sorry, dispatching about a call. Respond with the police. 4747 Summer Street. Female party jumped off the top floor of the house and suicide attempt 1812.
It's unknown where the knife is, or whatever she used to slit her. She's in the... Looks like they're pinging around the back. We'll get that info now.
I'm going to get all 3 mutual aids at this time. I'm getting you 3 mutual aid ambulances. I struck the box. We got 3 on the way. Okay, I got 1 here. I got 4 patients total. 7 Summer Street. 30 ambulance in for a suicidal situation. Time of the week.
On January 24, 2023, Patrick Clancy, a father of 3, rushed back to his home in Duxbury, Massachusetts, after completing a quick task. However, he encountered something straight out of a nightmare. His wife, Lindsay, lay badly injured in the backyard, and their 3 children were motionless in the basement. The whole town was shocked as news of the tragedy spread rapidly, and the investigation that followed revealed a truth more disturbing than anyone could have imagined. What could have transpired during the brief period Patrick was away? And what secrets did the Clancy family conceal behind closed doors? Duxbury, Massachusetts, a small seaside town with approximately 16,000 residents, sits about 35 miles southeast of Boston along the coast. Noted for its historic landmarks and quintessential New England-style houses, Duxbury boasts a plethora of beautiful parks and recreational spots, including Duxbury Beach, where people can enjoy swimming, fishing, and boating. In essence, it is an idyllic and charming town, catering to a wide range of interests, be it history, the outdoors, or the arts. And it is here that our story commences. In 2016, Patrick and Lindsay Clancy tied the knot in a breathtaking wedding that left everyone in awe. 2 years later, in 2018, they took a leap and purchased an adorable house at 47 Summer Street in Duxbury, Massachusetts, marking the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. Their love blossomed as their family grew, with 3 beautiful children arriving in the span of 6 years. Their first child, a sweet girl named Cora, was born in 2018. 2 years later, They welcomed a bouncing baby boy named Dawson. Their joy knew no bounds when Callan, another baby boy, joined the Clancy family on May 26, 2022, bringing them even more happiness. Each of Mr. and Mrs. Clancy's children possessed distinct and delightful personalities, making their journey together nothing short of magical. Cora, a pretty girl with a kind heart, aspired to be both a doctor and a mom, often giving her little brother Callan checkups that melted her parents' hearts. Dawson's big, warm brown eyes radiated friendliness and humor, and he was always eager to share his toys with others. Callan, the youngest of the Clancy kids, embodied the epitome of a happy baby, wearing a constant smile since his birth, earning him the endearing nickname Happy Callan. Lindsay and Patrick proved to be exemplary parents, pouring boundless love and care into their children's lives. Undeterred by any challenges, Lindsay, working as a nurse in labor and delivery at Massachusetts General Hospital, was accustomed to taking care of people, but her devotion to her children surpassed all. She paid close attention to every detail of their lives and cherished every moment spent with them, whether it was exercising while carrying them or pushing Dawson in his stroller while Cora pedaled alongside. Patrick, who ran a business from the basement of their family home, made sure to engage actively with his kids, taking them on adventures and showing them the wonders of the world. His love for them grew stronger with each passing day, knowing they were the most precious part of his life. Initially, everything appeared to be going well for the Clancy family. However, that all changed in an instant when tragedy struck without warning. On the morning of January 24, 2023, a fresh blanket of snow covered the world. Lindsay and Cora rose early for Cora's doctor's appointment, as Lindsay, on maternity leave since Callan's birth, had concerns about her daughter's health. Upon returning home, they found Dawson playing outside in the snow. Laughter and joy filled the air as they built a snowman together, capturing those precious moments in pictures to share with family. As the day progressed, Lindsay began contemplating dinner plans, researching the distance to the 3View restaurant in Plymouth online. Later, at 4:47 p.m., Lindsay dialed CVS Pharmacy in Kingston to inquire about children's Miralax, a medicine aiding kids with bowel movements. The boss informed her that the item was out of stock, but offered alternative suggestions. Once off the call, she promptly texted her husband Patrick, who worked in his home office in the basement, asking if he wanted to order takeout for dinner. Patrick agreed, and she immediately placed an order for a Mediterranean power bowl for herself and a scallop and pork belly risotto for him. Additionally, she requested him to pick up the medicine for the kids on his way back. At 5:10 p.m., the order was placed, and Patrick departed a few minutes later to collect the takeout and the medicine. By 5:33 p.m., Patrick arrived at the CVS Pharmacy in Kingston. Hurrying to the kids section, he reached for his phone to call Lindsay and confirm the correct medicine, but she didn't answer. Lindsay returned the call within a minute, verifying the purchase. Upon picking up the food, the aromas of the Mediterranean power bowl and the flavors of the scallop and pork belly risotto tantalized Patrick. Eager to return home for the family meal, little did he know that an impending tragedy would forever alter his life, leaving him profoundly changed. As Patrick pulled into his driveway, he couldn't help but notice the strange silence in the air. The absence of his children's laughter or any sounds was highly unusual. His heart raced as he swiftly exited the car and hurried to the house. Inside, he called out for his wife and kids, but received no response, leaving him with an unsettling feeling, as if he had walked onto a movie set for a horror film. Ascending the steps, his heart pounded faster with each stride. Reaching their second-floor bedroom, he found the door locked, which raised questions and anxious thoughts in his mind. After attempting to shake the door handle several times to no avail, a mix of anger and fear compelled him to forcefully open the door. The sight that awaited him was nightmarish. Blood covered the floor and the window stood open, swaying in the wind. Fear overwhelmed him, and with a quick glance out the window, his worst fears were confirmed. Lindsay lay motionless on the ground, 20 feet below, resembling a scene from a terrible dream. Rushing out of the bedroom, his mind raced as he made his way to the garden, where he discovered his wife lying broken with blood dripping from her wrists and hands. Though distraught at the sight, He was relieved to find she was still alive. While she remained unconscious, he questioned her about what had happened, and to his surprise, she confessed to attempting suicide by jumping out of the bedroom window. Patrick's mind reeled at the incomprehensible event, questioning how such a tragedy could unfold. Immediately, he dialed 911, informed the operator of their location, and expressed their intention to gather information on any objects used during the incident. He stated that it seemed that they were in the back, and they would gather the necessary details regarding all three mutilations promptly. While waiting for the paramedics, he anxiously wondered about the safety of their children, knowing they were in the basement. Patrick's heart was racing as he hurried downstairs to the basement. The manifestation of his darkest nightmare was in front of him. He yelled for the people he loved dearly, Cora, Callan, and Dawson, but no one responded. His heart plummeted as he approached the den. What he witnessed was unimaginable to him. The youngsters had neck-tightening exercise bands around them as they lay still on the ground. Patrick was frantically attempting to remove the bands with quivering hands while pleading with his children to breathe. However, it appeared that it was too late. The children had been choking and were silent. The weight of the grief was too much for him to bear. Sirens in the distance startled Patrick out of his melancholy. When the police and firefighters arrived, they immediately assumed control. They hurried the children to Beth Israel Deaconess Hospital, Plymouth, after placing them in ambulances. Lindsay had treatment at Weymouth South Shore Hospital at the same time. As he awaited word regarding his family, Patrick kept an eye on the time. His heart was heavy with anxiety and anguish as he prayed for his children's safety. But when the medics informed him that Cora and Dawson had passed away at 7:28 p.m., his entire world fell apart. It was difficult for Patrick to deal with the dreadful tragedy that had happened to his family as his heart broke into a million pieces. But despite the darkness, a dim glimmer of hope started to shine. Amazingly, Callan was still alive despite desperately trying to save his life. After being revived by medical personnel, he was swiftly transported by medical flight to the Boston Children's Hospital. He was in terrible state, but the medical staff persisted in trying to save his life. Patrick clung to the hope that his youngest child would survive the horror and restore harmony to his disjointed existence. The day after the tragic incident, on January 25, 2023, the police issued an arrest warrant for Lindsay. There were 2 counts of murder and 3 counts of strangling against Lindsay. As the investigation progressed, it became obvious that Lindsay was responsible for the deaths of her own children. The town was in astonishment after hearing the news. People struggled to comprehend how a mother who appeared so normal could murder her own children. Lindsay slept in the hospital during the pandemonium and was unable to explain her actions or why she did them. People in the formerly tranquil village struggled to come to grips with what had happened as they continued to mourn the loss of innocent lives. On January 27, 2023, at 11:18 a.m., Callan's valiant battle for life came to an end. It had been a cloudy night. Despite the best efforts of the medical staff at Boston Children's Hospital, the 8-month-old's catastrophic brain injury was irreparable. He could not withstand the harm the workout band around his neck was doing to this frail physique. It was a dreadful incident that really shocked everyone. After being slept for days, Lindsay eventually opened her eyes. She utilized an easel to express her thoughts to people despite breathing through a tube. She suffered severe injuries from the fall, leaving her paralyzed below the waist. However, despite the fact that she was in a difficult situation, the cops charged her right away. There was a ton of evidence, and one cannot run away from the facts. The path toward obtaining justice for what occurred on January 24 was just beginning. Patrick finally had the guts to speak up on January 28, 2023. On the family's GoFundMe website, his poignant post caused thousands of people to choke up. He composed the article because the death of his 3 lovely children, Cora, Dawson, and Callan, left him distraught and devastated. He described the unfathomable suffering and shock he was experiencing, as well as how lost he felt without his children, who were the most important things in his life. He was able to forgive Lindsay in spite of everything, and he urged others to do the same. He also let everyone know that the genuine Lindsay welcomed and cared for everyone. Following the post, Patrick and his family received an enormous outpouring of love and support. People from all over the world donated money to cover the family's medical expenses, funeral expenses, and legal assistance. On February 6, 2023, Lindsay called her husband while renowned psychologist Dr. Paul Ziesel was present. To ascertain Lindsay's emotional state, her attorney hired Dr. Ziesel. She revealed a stunning secret to everyone during that call. Lindsay claimed that on January 24, following Patrick's departure from their home, she experienced a psychotic episode in which she heard voices. She claimed that a man's voice instructed her to murder herself and her beloved children because it was her final opportunity to do so. Patrick and the psychologist were both in a state of shock after hearing what she said because of the significance of what she stated. After a thorough psychiatric assessment, the stunning reason behind Lindsay's horrific actions was discovered. It turned out that she had been experiencing postpartum depression. A lot of people believe that having children is one of the best things that can happen to a woman. This is not always the case, though. After giving delivery, a woman may experience postpartum psychosis or postpartum melancholy, both of which can be extremely difficult to manage. Clinical melancholy, known as postpartum depression, affects mothers after giving birth to a child. It may result from hormonal fluctuations, insufficient sleep, or worry. Feeling depressed, giving up hope, and having difficulty sleeping are a few symptoms of depression. Postpartum psychosis, on the other hand, is a rare but serious disease that affects 1 to 2 new mothers out of every 1,000 newborns. It makes people experience hallucinations, incorrect beliefs, and a great deal of uncertainty. Women who have previously experienced schizophrenia or bipolar disorder are more likely to experience postpartum psychosis. To keep the mother and infant safe and healthy, both disorders require prompt medical attention. Because Lindsay's anxiety and despair were so severe in the months leading up to the catastrophe, she frequently saw a doctor. She still had mental health issues, despite having a diagnosis of generalized anxiety disorder. To treat her problems, she received an amazing 13 different psychiatric drugs. These included potent medications with substantial hazards and side effects, such as clonazepam, Valium, Prozac, sertraline, and lorazepam. Despite the fact that Lindsay's husband Patrick said she took the medications as prescribed, she admitted to the couple in December 2022 that she was considering harming their children. On January 1, 2023, Lindsay entered McLean Hospital in Massachusetts. After she was hospitalized, some medications were stopped and others were started for her. She was able to leave her home on January 5. She denied having ideas when her husband Patrick questioned her about them in the weeks that followed. As further details regarding Lindsay's mental state emerged, it became apparent that her struggles with postpartum depression may have contributed to her behavior. This would be a crucial point in her future legal defense. Lindsay appeared to be a different person when the camera focused on her pale face because of the neck brace and mask. On February 7, 2023, Lindsay attended her fictitious arraignment via Zoom while lying in a hospital bed and paralyzed. Since the tragic accident that claimed her children, this was the first time anyone had seen her. As the trial got underway, both Lindsay's attorney Kevin Reddington and the prosecution agreed that her family was aware of her deteriorating sadness and unsettling thoughts following the birth of her son Callan in May 2022. Reddington then expressed the view that Lindsay might have experienced postpartum depression or possibly postpartum psychosis as a consequence of this situation. But according to the authorities, that is untrue. They claimed that she never claimed to be hallucinating, crazy, or to be speaking or thinking strangely. The conversation became tense as both parties tried to make their points. In an unexpected turn of events, prosecutors discovered that Lindsay had been keeping mental notes on her phone. She noted in her journal in December 2022 that she occasionally considered harming their kids. She disclosed her thoughts to her husband as well. She did not express her thoughts in writing or verbally following her stay at McLean Hospital, though. On January 1, 2023, she entered McLean Hospital. She discussed her concerns with her husband and a therapist at the time. On January 5, 2023, when she was discharged from the hospital, they did not attempt to have her locked up despite the risk she posed to both herself and other people. Everyone in the courtroom was astounded by the announcement, which highlighted Lindsay's severe mental health issues. Regarding Lindsay's feelings following the passing of her children, The prosecutors also revealed something surprising. 3 days after the incident, while still attached to a breathing tube and barely aware, they claimed Lindsay scribbled a note requesting the services of a lawyer. According to the prosecution, this was one of the first questions demonstrating that she was aware of what she was doing and the consequences that would follow. From their perspective, this demonstrated that Lindsay was not totally insane, but rather committed some crimes on purpose.
Take advantage of the situation when her husband left the home that night. She created the situation, and she used Apple Maps to make sure she would have enough time to strangle each child before her husband returned from where she had sent him.
Due to this, authorities claimed that Lindsay's children's deaths were not impromptu, but rather methodically planned. The defendant did not take advantage of the fact that their husband had left the home that evening. To ensure she had enough time to kill each child before her husband returned from wherever she had taken him, she created the scenario and used Apple Maps to plan her route. Both the defendant and other people are in danger. She plotted these killings, gave herself the space and time she needed to carry them out, and then strangled each child where they belonged. Her phone records, which revealed the searches she conducted the day of the murders, served as the basis for the proof. There was a lot of tension in the room as Lindsay's defense attorney, Reddington Rose, entered the witness stand. He claimed that Lindsay's 3 small children were not intentionally killed, but rather as a result of the nation not doing enough to assist new mothers with their mental health issues. Reddington painted a vivid image of a woman who felt let down by the medical professionals who were supposed to care for her. He claimed that Lindsay was given a cocktail of medications that were ineffective overall and prevented her from experiencing true emotion. The counsel recognizes that the general consensus is that this woman poses a risk to her own well-being. She might not be able to make it to the hearing. It is mentioned that she has strong emotions, but she has never been able to show them in a genuine way, including happiness, sadness, or crying. It is interesting to note that a month or so prior, she had stated that she simply desired to experience some form of sensation. Currently, due to the drug's effects on her, she is under suicide watch 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Different people in the courtroom had various opinions on what the defense attorney said. While some people nodded in agreement with him, others appeared to have their doubts. As the trial went on, a deluge of letters from people wanting to support Lindsay came in. They spoke up for her and shared tales of their own struggles with postpartum depression. Everyone who wrote her a letter, from close friends to complete strangers, praised Lindsay's moral character, berated her for using so many medications, and asserted that Lindsay could not have murdered her 3 adored children. All of the letters expressed empathy and sympathy for the issues women experience both before and after pregnancy. They serve as a call to action for additional assistance and support for mothers who are suffering from postpartum depression. The prosecution made it obvious that they disagreed with Lindsay's defense strategy as the drama in the courtroom continued. They did not think she was just the result of taking too many medications and substances. They wanted to keep her in custody without bail because there was so much at risk. However, the judge ruled that Lindsay had to remain in the hospital where she had been since the alleged murder of her 3 children. Lindsay's destiny now rests with the grand jury, which will determine whether or not to charge her with murder. They can all sense the tension as they wait for the decision. On July 25, 2023, following her next court date, it is still uncertain what will happen in this tragic situation. There are many unanswered mysteries following the tragic deaths of Lindsay Clancy's 3 children. The tragic and difficult scenario has shocked the neighborhood. As we consider this situation, it raises significant issues regarding postpartum depression, mental health, and the resources available to women who need assistance. What else can be done to guarantee that women receive the support they require at this delicate time? And how may tragedies like this be avoided in the future? Please share your thoughts with us in the comments. Join, like, comment, and share the channel. Thank you for watching.